Do I just not know how to use YouTube? That's entirely possible. So it looks like what happened is that the cards that I set up in some of my other videos are actually pointing to last week's stream. I hope that anyone that comes across that figures out how to get to this one. And hopefully if I've set everything up correctly, when I start broadcasting here, all of this should go out across social media as an announcement to Twitter and Facebook and everything else. And if it doesn't, I don't know. I'll work on that more between now and next week. I've just had a lot going on lately, but I am doing, everything that I understand how to do properly to make this work and to get the message out to people and give you notice ahead of time. So I did set this up earlier last week, and I want to just give this a minute or two to make sure that anyone who was planning to join at 2 p.m. is able to get on. So I don't want to jump into any topics just yet. If anyone wants to throw something up in the chat, that would be awesome, because then I'll know that I have the right chat box opened. And I'll also know that you can see and hear what I'm saying, because I can do that manually, but it takes a lot of effort. I have to poke around on the screen and do all kinds of funny stuff. But I am going to work out some kind of shortcuts for that, because I really enjoy the live streaming format. I'm just a complete beginner at using it. So bear with me. This will improve over time. As you can see, I got rid of the funky looking background where I was just kind of sitting in front of my desk. I don't typically love green screen, chroma key, that kind of stuff. But for the time being, until I set up a better backdrop, this is what you get. So hopefully that works for you. Now, the interesting thing here is that I was told that I need all these great lights set up in order to make this happen. But look what happens when I kill my lights. The only thing that really is affected is pretty much the shadow on me. Everything in the background actually works. So I question whether I really need these or not, and if it's worth sitting through it. But because the bright lights in your face are a bit distracting, and I'm trying to concentrate on what's going on here. Now, I know that there's a lag, so anything that you're hearing right now, I probably said like a minute ago, so I'm going to try to move a little slow through each topic and give everyone plenty of time to respond. If you have something to add, by all means, throw it in there, questions, comments. You might even be able to answer some of my questions, because I have a few when it comes to iOS 11, Apple in general, and a number of other things. So let me get back over to my notes here. Whoops, that is not it. Why does iMessage pop up? I got to tell you, phones and computers, in particular, Apple computers, do some interesting things. Now I cannot see my notes. There we go, because I've got to have the browser open in order for you to see the browser window on this software. It's just kind of funky. It's the way it works. So yes, the thumbnail that you saw for the video, that is not real, obviously. That is the home button dongle that someone came up with. I thought it was pretty funny. At this point, if Apple continues to take functionality away from their devices and then repackage it as a product that they can sell separately, that's kind of, it's just easy to laugh at, if nothing else. You can question their intentions, or, whether they're actually being courageous or just trying to be profitable. It's probably a little bit of both in any case, but the absence of the home button won't bother me in particular. I think there are other people that feel differently about that, so we'll have to see what happens. But what really gets me is that apparently with the new iPhones, the 8 and the 10, which I called the X for the longest time, because, I don't know, they chose a Roman numeral, apparently will not support fast charging through the cable that is included with the phone. Now, if that means if you go buy an iPhone 8 or an iPhone 10, you plug it in with the charger that comes with it, you will not have the full charging capability. And in fact, at that point, you have two options. You can buy a USB, a USB-C to Lightning cable adapter, or a cable. You can buy a cable that will charge the phone rapidly for $25 at the Apple Store, or you can buy an adapter that starts anywhere from $49 and goes up all the way to, I think, $75 or $99, something like that. So I can't solve error 9 problem 5S. Error 9. What's funny is I was actually looking at a list of error codes earlier. I will come back to that in a minute. A deal? I actually have a list somewhere around here. In fact, I am going to give you... Shoot. You know what? I don't have it in my bookmarks, but if you do a Google search for error code, iPhone error code wiki, you will come up with a somewhat comprehensive list of what causes different errors on iPhones that you obviously won't be able to get answered by Apple. So if you have a chance, throw that in your search box, and later on, if you still haven't found it, I'll pull it up and show you. I'm sure that error 9 is a pretty common one. It actually sounds really familiar. I just can't recall right off the top of my head what it is. But you can at least figure out what's causing the problem. All right, so Here's an interesting thing. The iOS 11 upgrade, are you going to do it? Personally, I am not going to do it right away for the same reason that I don't upgrade most of my devices whenever a new operating system, upgrade, firmware, whatever you want to call it, becomes available. And that is because we know that these are brand new pieces of software that have not been as comprehensively tested as can possibly be. So, when Apple create something, for example, iOS 11, and they put it on, who knows, a dozen, 100, 1,000, a million phones, they got beta testers out there trying it out. We have to keep in mind that there are tens, if not hundreds of millions of iPhones out being used on the market, and there's no way that they can possibly catch every little bug that comes through there. So rather than having the possibility of experiencing one of those problems, if 11.0 comes out, I'll wait till 11.0.1 is released, because that will typically be the fix for most of the bugs that happen in the new software. However, there is kind of a big problem for some people, because there is a compatibility issue with the IC chip that is built into the display on some of the aftermarket screens. So if you have an iPhone 6s or an iPhone 7 and you've had your screen replaced with an aftermarket part, basically, there's a possibility that your touch functionality will basically disappear. So we've been hearing this kind of randomly from different sources all over the place, and someone who is pretty reputable, the source is relatively reputable, says that they know or suspect that they know what the problem is. And I want to pull this up just for all my tech people that are here today so that you'll know what exactly we're looking for. If I can get this screen to stretch out. Okay, so the thing about aftermarket iPhone screens is that if it's got an LCD on it, traditionally up until I think about a year ago or so, it was manufactured by it was basically an iPhone original LCD that had a new piece of glass fitted onto it. So, changing out the glass and or digitizer and polarizer typically wouldn't cause many issues for anyone who has, whatever that particular model of phone happens to be. Now, over time, someone or people in overseas have figured out how to create an LCD that will be compatible with iPhone. So they didn't have to take an old iPhone part, remove the broken glass and put a new piece of glass on. They actually started manufacturing third-party LCDs that were compatible. And two of these companies, which one I may not be able to pronounce correctly, one of them was Tianma and the other one was Hankai. I'm probably still pronouncing that wrong. So these two companies were able to make third-party screens for iPhones. Well, apparently, they would purchase what they call the Flex IC, which is the integrated circuit that's built into the Flex cable that connects the screen to the phone and allows your touchscreen to operate. Well, there are different suppliers and different types of chips that enable that functionality, and it looks like there is at least one type that is not compatible or doesn't have, the capability to support the current version of iOS 11. So what that means is that if we look at something like a third-party screen, like a Tianma screen, you may have two identical screens that came from the same supplier. One of them might work with iOS 11 and one of them might not. So you can't just go onto your shelf and say, okay, let me pick one of these random screens, plug it in and see if it works. Okay, everything's fine, all my screens are good. It doesn't work that way, because within these parts assembly companies in China, when they buy an LCD from one place and they get a digitizer for another and they put these two things together, they may be using a number of different suppliers for that IC that goes onto the Flex cable. So you could easily have a company that has 100 screens and 99 of them work, or you could have a company with 100 screens and one of them works and the rest of them aren't compatible. So it's going to take time, obviously, to go through these and figure out what the problem is, and obviously who's going to eat the cost of those replacement parts. Because if you have a customer come back with a screen that is no longer functioning on iOS 11, you install an OEM screen, everything's working fine, so we know that the problem is actually the screen and not the phone, and then you go back to your vendor and you say, hey, I've got stacks of these screens that don't work, I would assume they could probably send them back to their facility where they do the refurbishing, pull off the old digitizer and IC and put a new one on. I assume that's possible. So obviously, though, there's still going to be some cost involved in doing with that. And it's my understanding that it was the very inexpensive ICs that are the ones that are susceptible to this problem. So unfortunately, once again, if you cut your cost down as low as you possibly can, you may end up creating some problems for yourself. We've seen this over time, with a lot of people in the business and a lot of our competitors where they just say, hey, I want to be able to replace a screen for $45. Well, obviously, if you're getting a part that enables you to perform a repair for that amount of money, there's usually going to be a catch. And, historically, a lot of people have thought that maybe Apple is trying to sabotage the repair industry. They're coming out with this operating system that's going to kill any aftermarket parts, or it's going to brick the phone if you have an aftermarket part installed in your device. And I've always been very skeptical about that, because my belief is that, up until recently at least, I don't think that most companies like Apple and Samsung have really seen anyone who is performing repairs as a threat to their business model. They've always been in a position where they're the big company. Another small competitor comes into town and says, hey, we can perform some of Apple's services, although we're not authorized by them. And they say, Apple's attitude has always kind of been, well, that's fine, if you want to go there, but you will void your warranty, or we won't be able to help you, or, beware, these people don't know what they're doing, which is laughable, because I think if you took the average successful repair shop technician and put him next to a certified Apple genius, the tasks that we are able to perform compared to the guys that, only get the Apple training, only get the technician training for Apple to work at the Apple store, is probably quite different. I think that we have a much wider range of repairs that we are capable of performing. Now, the downside to that, of course, is that anyone can call themselves a technician and open up a shop, and if you could pick someone randomly and you might end up getting someone who doesn't know what they're doing. But I think across the board, we really have an advantage in that we're not restricted in what we offer in the way of repairs by any corporation that says, you can't do this, you're only able to do this, we're only going to show you how to do this. From our perspective, it's pretty much limited to what we are capable of learning on our own. Humras, sorry guys, my chat's really small. Dear bro, I need your help. Okay, what kind of help do you need? Let me know. I will try to help you. So going back though, I think that what we're going to see is that people are going to come in, their screens aren't working. If you switch them out with an OEM screen and it works, then we know that the screen itself was the problem. The procedure at that point by default would be to send that screen back to the supplier that you got it from and hope that they will deal with it, and hope that they're not pulling anything funny like some companies that, unfortunately started to gain my, hold on, I'm trying to shut this thing down so I can have a bigger window. There we go. One of the companies that I hadn't used for a long time who had terrible parts a few years ago sounded like they were doing much better. I had several recommendations from some local shops that used them. We started buying their parts again, and they were good for a couple weeks, and then they started sending garbage again. So it's that quality fade effect seems like it's inherent in certain companies. It's not like just from one to the next. It's like you get one supplier and they do good for a few weeks or a month, and then all of a sudden they start sending you garbage while your other suppliers still have good quality products. So it's unfortunate to see that happening again. I wish that people could just sell good quality stuff, because if you want to stay in business for any amount of time, why wouldn't you do that? I don't get it. Okay, so iOS 11, here are some of the highlights if you haven't already seen it, and if you're kind of on the edge of whether or not, or on the fence as to whether or not you want to upgrade. Personally, I like to wait until all the bugs are worked out. But if Apple is still signing the old 10.3.3 or whatever the last software version was, and you can roll back to that, then it wouldn't probably hurt to try it out, as long as you know that you can always go back if you need to. But there's no guarantee on how long they will sign these firmware. So, it could be today, it could be tomorrow, it could be an hour. They might say you're on iOS 11, you're there to stay, and you can't do anything until we have an upgrade available. So I'm really hesitant to do that. But I actually saw quite a few features in iOS 11 that I think are cool. So on occasion, when there's a minor update, it's usually going to be some sort of little security patch, some sort of, fix for battery drain or something really basic like that. I shouldn't say basic, because battery drain is a pretty important one, but there will often be some minor tweaks that I'm really not that concerned with. And in many cases, it will be things where the person or the company who makes the upgrade wants to have a little more control over their product, or they found out that someone gained some access that they shouldn't have, and it's debatable as to what kind of rights you have as a consumer when you own a product, because by the, according to the letter of the law, you don't own it. You don't own the software that's installed on it. You have a license to use it, but there are restrictions as far as what you're able to do with your physical possession when it contains any sort of, programming code or anything else that's built into it that could be proprietary. So with that in mind, taking a look at iOS 11, I think that overall it looks really cool because they have do not disturb while driving. This has been a big one for me, and you know that I always bring this up, but for the last, let's see, this is 2017, so at least since about 2012, 2013, I think it was, Windows was doing this on their phones a long time ago. You hop in the car, it automatically detects a Bluetooth connection. In this case, it actually detects whether or not you're moving in a car. So I assume based on velocity, your iOS 11 device will know that you're in a car and that you're driving, and it will automatically put a do not disturb on your phone, so your phone won't ring, no text messages will come through. To me, it's almost been as simple as just ignoring them. But what happens is when you're paired to your stereo and you're playing music and you have alerts going off, it can be quite annoying. Not to mention the fact that you want the person who's placing the call or the text message to know that the message is getting through to you and you're not just ignoring them. Well, what's cool about this do not disturb is that it will stop the alerts from showing up on your phone while you're driving. It won't interrupt your music, and it will enable you to send an automated message back to the person who's trying to contact you to let them know I'm driving. And I'm sure that you can customize that message and say, I'll be a certain place at a certain time or whatever. I'm driving. I'll call you as soon as I get there. I'll send you a text. So I really like the idea of having that feature on the phone. To bring the Windows, which, is obviously antiquated and won't be coming back, it doesn't look like, possibly, who knows. One thing I liked about that phone is that it would also give me the option to voice answer my text messages. And I think that there's a way that you can configure Siri to do this. But when I was in the car driving and my phone would ring, it would audibly say, you have a phone call coming in. Do you want to answer it? You can say yes or no. If I had a text message coming in, it says, you have a text message coming in. Would you like me to read it to you? And I'd say yes, and it would read the message. And by voice, I could respond back to it and send it. And you never touch the phone the entire time. I think that if you've got, Apple Play or something like that in your car, you can probably do something very similar. But just the fact that they have the Do Not Disturb Enable feature built into iOS 11, I think that is awesome. I hope hi Andrew. I hope that it prevents people from having accidents. That's the main concern. We see a lot of people who, it looks like they know that it's a bad idea to text and drive, but I think it's that mentality of it will never happen to me, and until it does happen to you. And when it does, it may often involve other people who really didn't have a choice in that matter. So that's a big one. When will iPhone have a scheduled power on or off? That is actually a good question. And I have a list of them. I'd be happy to send to Apple. I'm sure they won't listen to me, but there's a lot of things that iPhones don't do that I would like them to. And what makes me insane about it is trying to convey that information to someone who has 100% bought into their technology. And that's actually another topic I want to come back to later. So I want to stick with iOS 11 and try to stick within my format, because last time I ended up going over time, and I'll probably go quite a bit more. But that's an excellent question. Be able to turn it on and off. The only thing is that if the phone is actually turned off, it's got to have something that is connected to a power source in order to tell it to turn back on. So I'm not sure. There's probably some sort of hardware limitation that would prevent that. I don't know if they would have to have like an internal, a secondary lithium-ion battery somewhere in the phone that would tell it to turn back on, or maybe one component that's hooked directly into the battery or into a circuit where it's got constant power supply. I mean, that actually wouldn't be that difficult when you think about it, because we already know that the backlight on the iPhone 6s is connected to the battery and it has voltage running through it even when the phone is turned off. So really, it's probably just a matter of adding an additional piece of hardware, or maybe tapping into a circuit that has that constant voltage going through it, that would have enough, that would be able to prompt the phone to turn on. I think that would be the biggest challenge there, but why not? Yeah, it'd be a good one. And it'll probably be something that's released on, another update in the future. I certainly don't know a definitive answer for that one. So here's another cool thing about iOS 11. You can actually type to Siri. And I know that kind of sounds silly. The whole idea behind Siri is that you have a voice assistant, right? You tell her what to do and she listens and she responds. Well, She has gotten a lot better, but when Siri first launched, it was, in my opinion, pretty horrible. Has definitely come a long way, is getting much better, but when it comes to unusual names or words that sound like they're two different words linked together, she definitely makes a lot of mistakes still. So in addition to having the ability to access Siri without speaking out loud, because you may not want everyone in the room to hear you talking. You might not want to interrupt something that's going on, and you may not want anyone else to be getting into your business. It is cool that you'll be able to actually type something into Siri. Now, why would you go to Siri and type rather than going on to Google search or whatever else? I don't know. I'm sure there's an advantage to it. But the main thing that I see there with Siri is that when you try to tell her something and she can't understand the word, or maybe it's not in her vocabulary, it's not in her dictionary vocabulary. I'm talking about Siri like she's a person, right? Siri doesn't have a comprehensive vocabulary, so a lot of times there are words and names. A lot of times you may be talking about a word that is from another language, and I think she has a hard time putting two different languages back together. So to me, that's actually kind of a cool feature. If I get to that one word that she can't understand, I can just type it in. So that's pretty cool. The flick keys for the iPad, I don't know if you heard about this or not. iPad's keyboard has changed a little bit, and now you will be able to use single keys for several different characters. So they have this new thing, it's called flick or flick keys, where you basically touch the key and hold it, and if you flick it in a different direction, say I'm holding down on the L key and I kind of slide down, it will alternate to a different character and enter that for me, so I don't have to go to shift or tab or change the keyboard or anything like that. So that's actually, functionality wise, a pretty cool feature to build in for iPads. I personally have still, I'm yet to get used to typing on a surface that doesn't move. I'm so used to that tactile feedback that you get from moving buttons that it's a work in progress. Now, why isn't it the same on the phone? Well, on the phone, you're using your thumb. You're not using all of your fingers. So when you're trying to type onto a screen that doesn't move, it just feels foreign to me at this point. But I think that over time, especially with features like that built in, for functionality, that's awesome. You flick the key, you get something else. You don't have to go into any special characters or hold shift down and press something else. That is a really cool feature to have. Now, on the downside, one of the things that was pointed out about the iOS 11 Control Center is that it now takes up the entire screen instead of taking up half of it on the 2/3 or whatever it was on the bottom when you slide it up. So I don't see that as a big issue, because if you've opened the Control Center, you're probably concentrating on turning something on or off or enabling something. So I don't think that covering up the rest of the screen is really a big deal. However, one of the things that's happened in this transition is that now if you open up your Control Center and you turn off your Wi-Fi or your Bluetooth, you are simply disconnecting from the network that you were communicating with. You're not actually turning off that function. So there are some situations where I want to turn my Bluetooth on and off. I do this quite regularly. When I'm not using Bluetooth, I always turn it off because, we can always use that extra little bit of battery standby power, right? Well, now you cannot do it from the Control Center. You've actually got to go into the settings and flick the little lever. I know, first world problems, right? But I think it may be misleading to people who haven't read any of the documentation that comes with iOS 11 and just upgraded, and might think that they're turning their Wi-Fi and Bluetooth on and off when in fact they're not. I mean, you'll definitely know if you turn it off and it's not on. But what's more likely to happen is you have it turned on, you've disconnected from the network by using the Control Center, and you have not actually turned that feature off, which ultimately, if it's constantly searching for a network on Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, you are in fact draining the battery more than you need to. So that's kind of not a great one. It'd be nice if you had an option, a little say in the matter as to whether or not that will happen. But this is what we have for the moment. Beyond that, they have added a smart invert colors option for the display that will work like a dark mode for your phone or tablet. So this is kind of a cool one. It's supposed to be better on your eyes, have some advantages to using your phone at night. And I just want to say for the record, I do use the night mode. It's supposed to have some sort of blue light filter or something that's easier on your eyes. But am I the only one who feels like if you're in a pitch black room in the middle of the night and you turn on your phone and you have the dimmer set to the lowest possible setting there is, it is still blinding? Like, is there a reason that we can't just dim it a little bit more? Because if the room is completely dark, you don't need a whole lot of light coming out of your phone. Now, maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe it's not healthy to look at something in, try to read something in a very low light situation with the dimmer turned down too far. But for me, when I wake up and I need to see an alert, or I think I overslept, or I want to see what time it is, and I pick up the phone and I hit the button, that screen still on the lowest setting is just way too dark, and you're temporarily blinded. So if you try to get up and walk across the room, you have to wait a second for your eyes to adjust. And that one has always annoyed me. And it's really consistent on just about any phone. I think there are very few phones where I found that the dimmer function was sufficient. That would be an easy one, I would think, to change, just to expand the range. Let it go down a little bit lower. But again, they're not gonna ask me for this stuff, right? Okay, so here's an interesting one. They have a new feature that will enable your emergency SOS on your iPhone. So what this does is allows you to pull up a screen where you have the option of dialing emergency services, pulling up your medical records, or powering your phone off in an emergency situation. You can activate that feature by clicking 5 times fast. What is it? 5 times? Let me pull up the thing here because I haven't looked at both of these. Okay, so on the iPhone 10, 8, and 8 Plus, instead of... okay, so if you have something from 7 and prior to that supports iOS 11, you click on your power button 5 times fast on iOS 11, and it will put the phone into emergency SOS mode. If you have an iPhone 10, 8, or 8 Plus, instead of pressing the side button 5 times rapidly, you hold down the side button and one of the volume buttons at the same time just for a second, and it will put you into the same mode where you can make emergency calls. Now, you can imagine there are probably some situations where a people or person might want to discreetly enter emergency SOS mode. If you watch movies where people call 911 and then 911 calls back and the phone rings and then, the killer in the room finds a person, maybe you are in an emergency situation where you want as little noise as possible and you don't want to have to make a lot of hand movements. Maybe you're having a physical medical emergency and you're limited as far as how much you can move and what you can do. So that's kind of a cool feature. There are some interesting things that are going on with it though. If you don't go into your settings and disable this, there's actually a countdown mode with a 3-second alarm that will play before the phone automatically dials 911. So obviously, if you're in that killer in the room situation that you're trying to get away from, you don't want your phone to make a loud alarming sound as you're trying to dial 911. You can go into the settings and disable that. Obviously, that would be a good idea. If that's the situation you're worried about being in, I guess, I don't know how you're supposed to predict what's going on, because if you're suffering from a medical emergency, it's probably a great idea to have an audible alarm go off on your phone so that not only are you calling 911, but people around you will know that you're having a problem, assuming those are fine, upstanding citizens that are going to assist you and not steal your phone in the process, right? But, I don't think that's going to be happening most of the time. And nowadays, if you pick up somebody's phone and walk away with it, it's probably not going to do you a whole lot of good. We hope, anyways. So that is something that you will have the option of changing in your settings. You can also add emergency contacts. So if you have a known medical condition and you have people who know about your medical condition and how to address it, you can actually add them to the emergency contacts so that when you activate emergency SOS, your phone will notify them that you've activated the feature. Now, what I couldn't find is the details on how it notifies them that you've activated the feature. Does it send them in a text message? Does it give them a phone call? Does it send them an email? I have no idea. If anyone does, please answer. And if we don't come up with an answer today, I will put it in the description of this video when I find out what that is. But I went through about 5 different articles looking at all of the details of iOS 11. They all talked about the emergency SOS activation, but not a single one said how it's going to contact your emergency contacts. Now we know for 911 it's going to call, but if you can't talk and you initiate the emergency SOS feature on your phone and it actually calls your emergency contact, then what happens? Like, I mean, if you're not speaking and someone calls, if you call me and I don't hear anything, I usually hang up, and it's kind of a known protocol that if there's a drop call, the person who made the call initially is the one that calls back, right? Hopefully this isn't just a thing that I do, but back in the day when phones weren't all that reliable, this was the thing. We would drop calls all the time. And if you try to call me while I'm trying to call you, we both end up getting voicemail and we never connect the call. And then we both hang up and wait. And it's kind of like that thing that you do at a four-way stop. You know, this one's going to go, this one's going to go. They both stop and wait for each other. They both start to go again. Then they stop, then they go. So it's like, what do? So we kind of established as an unwritten rule that if a call drops, whoever placed the call is the one that calls back to get reconnected. Now, funny thing is, just a couple days ago, I had this exact thing happen with someone who I'd never talked to before, and the other party did not call me back. Well, I was sitting there waiting, thinking, well, the call dropped. He called me first. He should be calling me back. And then, in fact, I had to, call him. But I'm really curious as to how this emergency SOS feature is going to alert your contacts when you have an emergency. So anybody comes up with the answer to that, please let me know. It does not appear as though the emergency SOS feature is available for iPads that have a cellular feature, at least as of now. That's to the best of my knowledge. That may change. There may be an exception to that rule, but so far it looks like this is limited to iPhones. It can obviously be activated unintentionally. So this is a feature that and it comes by default. When you install iOS 11, you will have emergency SOS enabled. So if you think that you might be setting that thing off by accident and you don't want that to happen, you definitely want to disable the feature. Obviously, the first thing that comes to mind is small children. If you give your kids a phone to play with, to keep them occupied, there's a good possibility they could hit the power button 5 times, or they could hit the power button and volume button at the same time and activate the feature. So, something to keep in mind. We definitely don't want 911 to be getting unintended calls, because obviously they are limited on resources. Depending on where you live, you may have a very hard time getting a hold of 911. So we definitely don't want to add to the traffic that's going into that call center. So by all means, if you have kids or you think that might happen accidentally, definitely disable that feature. I think it's kind of odd that it's enabled by default, because obviously that's going to happen sometimes. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't know that when you accidentally dial 911, you should not hang up when the call goes through, because the operator on the other end has no idea what is going on with you. And the fact that you got disconnected could mean a number of things, many of which may require an emergency police, medical, or fire response. So if you don't, if you just hang up, they will usually call you back immediately. And if you don't answer, you shouldn't be surprised if someone comes knocking at your door shortly after, because in some cases, it could be the worst case scenario, and they've got to be prepared for that. So if you make that mistake, if you ever accidentally get disconnected to 911, tell them, stay on the line, tell them that you dialed the wrong number, sorry, whatever, and they'll usually get you off the phone pretty quickly after that, unless it sounds very suspicious. But I think that would be a feature personally that I would probably not activate myself, or I would deactivate if and when I upgrade to iOS 11 whatever the fix is going to be. Let's see. So we talked about some problems with the iPhone screens already. And yeah, here was the thing that I wanted to get to, and that is Apple has, probably sees most independent repair companies as small fish in a big pond. They want their customer to come back to them. They want to make money on the back end. That's what, most successful business models rely on, is that you make a customer for life. They come back and they spend more money with you. Nothing wrong with that. And I get the feeling that, 5 years ago, or let's say when the first iPhone came out, we were fixing the 2G, which is not fun. I sincerely doubt Apple could care less who was working on their phones. Outside of the fact that it would void their warranty, they probably could care less. But at this point, the ironic thing is this, that we are fighting to push this movement, this right to repair movement, which I fully endorse and I'm fully in favor of, because it's just kind of silly to try to say that you control your product to the degree that if someone needs it to be repaired, they must bring it back to you. I mean, it's not only unrealistic, it's just ridiculous. However, at the same time, I think the irony is that part of the reason that we can expect large companies to fight against our, what it is that we want to do, and to start seeing independent repair as a threat to their business model, is in fact the right to repair movement or right to repair legislation. Because when it comes to tying up time and energy and resources in a courtroom, where, you know, a company has to send someone as a representative to talk about their side of the case, and they have to start looking at the potential impact on their revenue stream. That's when they really start doing the math, and they start saying, hey, you know, there's X number of people going to X number of shops, getting so many numbers of repairs, and this all adds up to a dollar amount, and this is money that they can see coming into their front door. So again, while I am still behind it 100%, I think that one of the things that is going to be very ironic about this movement is that this is what's going to bring it, you know, to their attention in a big way, where they go, wow, you know what? We're at the point now where we have to start, if they haven't already, pay lobbyists to go to Congress and say, hey, don't let this thing pass. You know, whether, you know, whatever they do is not going to put us out of business, but it could definitely make things a lot easier if we had access to a lot of the parts that they have, their schematics and that kind of stuff. But I'm really wondering what position they're going to take on it now, especially that there's, you know, it's going to require them to tie up some resources in fighting against stuff like that. Harvey, what's going on? Hey, Mike, I did. You know what? In fact, I meant to email you back. Thank you. I do have the iPhone SE housing that you sent me. I saw what you're talking about. It looks a little sloppy. I have been meaning to take a closer look at that, but most importantly, I meant to email you, and it's just been a crazy week. But yes, I got it. Thank you very much. I'll see what I can do with it. Like you said, it might end up being something that I use as a prop, maybe in a repair video. But where did you buy that? Was that one of those like AliExpress things that you got overseas? Did you buy it on eBay? I'm curious to see, you know, to hear where it came from, and did they give you your money back? Because obviously that's not something you're going to be able to use. While I'm waiting for your response because of the lag here, I want to move on to something else here real quick. Where were we? I actually had another thing that I wanted to show you here. Oh, so by the way, tools, I really should have grabbed them. I've got stacks of tools. I kind of am working with some suppliers in China, and if you haven't noticed lately, if you're a subscriber, I've been doing a lot of review videos on tools because I have these companies that keep saying, hey, can you take this tool, test it out, give us your opinion, so forth. And as you know, YouTube does not pay a lot of money, so I've got to support the time that I put into this channel. So in many cases, they'll either let me have the tool, they'll send me some cash, they'll put something in my PayPal and so forth. So they will compensate me for creating these videos. But I want everyone to know that when I talk to these manufacturers, and I should have actually taken a letter that I wrote to them just to put on the screen. But when I get someone who approaches and asks me about doing a product review video, the first thing I tell them is that, hey, keep in mind, my reviews have to be 100% honest. I can't go in here and make your product look better than it really is. I really rely on maintaining credibility on my channel. So if your product sucks, I'm going to tell you first. That way you have the option of saying, okay, let's not go ahead and publish that video, or I'll go ahead and publish it as is, you know, the good with the bad. So I let them know right up front, you know, even if when and if I receive compensation for making these videos, I'm still not going to sugarcoat it. You know, I let people know exactly what's going on in there. So apparently that's a real problem on Amazon. They've even stopped people from getting promotional items to review. So whatever, which probably balances out the customers who are trying to scam them, you know, the person who sold the item and get free stuff and complaining when there's not really a problem, but whatever. So when these tools come in, I make review videos, and suddenly, for some reason, everyone found out that I do review videos on phone repair tools, which is cool. I've actually got one that I'm working on this week. I'm waiting for a port to come in, and I'm going to show you that later in a second, but this is a new logic board holder for micro soldering that I'll be making a video on this week. It's actually pretty cool. I haven't fully tested it out because, like I said, I'm waiting for a part to come in, but this thing uses magnets instead of clamps in order to hold your PCB in place. The whole board is magnetic, so I'll be checking that one out later on this week. I've got stacks of screwdrivers. I can't really see making a complete video out of one screwdriver, but there are a few that I think that you'll be interested in checking out. If Apple didn't charge so much money, maybe I would get it done there. That's a good point. And that is the thing, you know, especially when you consider their cost of manufacturing stuff, right? I mean, they are the supply, it's their part. It's not like they have to mark it up, but yeah, I think that unfortunately there might be a few. So Harvey, you bought the phone from Swappa. I'm guessing that you just swapped out the housing because that one wasn't working or something, or maybe someone else tried to do a DIY at home, something like that. Where was I going to go? There was actually something that I want to show you. Oh, so when it comes to parts, This is a funny one. I was getting ready to work on this tablet, and there's a company, long story short, it has a micro USB charge port that doesn't look like anything I've ever seen before. And when I went to search from my suppliers, eBay, AliExpress, China, every supplier you can possibly think of, I could not find this charging port. So fortunately, there was something printed on the port itself. It said ACON, A-C-O-N. And I said, well, let's do some Googling and look it up. And I found the company that manufactures these ports. I sent them an email, and here's what I said. I want you to see this. This is great. So on this email, this is what I wrote. Hi, I'm looking for a replacement charge port for an AQT100 Sprint Slate 10. So if you're not familiar with that, this is kind of a Sprint branded tablet. It's actually made by a company called Quanta, and they call it the AQT100 or Sprint Slate 10, not to be confused with the HP Slate 10, which is completely different and uses a different part. And you can see I have the link on the screen. I did as much research as I possibly could to try to find this part, and I said, but they don't sell it on their site. So I wrote them a letter, customer service. Can you tell me where to order it? So far, I can't find it anywhere. Help. All right. This is the response I got. Hello, Mike. Sorry, we don't support repair project unless you can buy minimum order quantity 5 to 10,000 per packing. Thank you. So they answered me, which was cool, but obviously I'm not going to buy 5 to 10,000 charge ports. The bigger question is, though, why isn't there a supplier for this part? This goes into the whole planned obsolescence thing. It's like, here's our device. The supplier sells the device to the manufacturer puts it together, sells it to us, and then there is no way to get a hold of a part when something like, something simple like a charge port. And this thing, micro USB, unfortunately, is a pretty horrible design when it comes to stress. And unfortunately, I have to say the same thing about USB-C. I really have my doubts about how long or how durable this is going to be. And we'll give credit to Apple on this. The Lightning port is probably one of the more durable ports that we've ever seen, in the last 10 years or so. But how come they haven't switched over to USB-C yet? I don't know. I think there's probably a lot of money that was put into Lightning connector technology, and they want to make more money off it. I don't know. But when you have something like a charge port, which we know charge ports fail. We know they get broken. People try to plug the wrong thing in. They try to plug it in upside down. We know this thing is going to be shot. And that's the reason I went ahead and removed it, because it didn't work. I knew it had to be replaced. And I was kind of curious to see how difficult that would be, because if you've worked on anything like a Kindle, most Motorola phones, the way that those are attached to the logic board makes it more challenging to remove than something like a Samsung charge port for the most part, especially when you get to the ground pins, because they take so much more heat to get them off. But when you have something that's going to fail like a micro USB port, and you don't have any supply line set up to replace that port when it breaks, that is a product that I personally will never buy. And I think that if most consumers knew that there is no option to get this, it's probably a 75-cent part if you were selling them wholesale. If that 75-cent part cannot be replaced, and your only course of action is to go to the manufacturer or to the store that you bought it from and pay whatever their fees are to get this thing sent back to the factory to have this 20-minute repair performed that's going to cost you half as much as the device is worth, how unlikely would you be to purchase that in the first place? But there's really no disclosure of that. And a long time ago there was a Latin phrase, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but it basically it translated to "let the buyer beware." And this is another one of these old sayings that I bring up, because a lot of people that probably subscribe to my channel weren't around when we were saying these kind of things, and they always had this thing where it's your responsibility as a consumer to be careful about what you spend your money on. Let the buyer beware. Know what you're getting, do your research, make sure you're buying from someone reputable. And now it seems that we've gone more towards it is the seller's job to protect the consumer across the board. It's your responsibility to make sure that your customer's happy. Well, why aren't people telling someone who buys a $200 tablet, and I know that's, not really expensive for a tablet, but it's still $200. Why aren't you telling them that when this 75-cent part fails or gets destroyed, that it's going to cost them $75 to $100 to get it repaired or refurbished? Let's see. Really sad. It was okay. It was fully stocked. So you know what? I'm sorry. I actually have it out in the car right now because I was taking it to the store. It was a fully stocked, fully functional rose gold iPhone SE, and the rear dimple was bugging me. Oh, so you just replaced it because you didn't like how it looked. Totally understandable. So a lot of times when you get these custom parts, they don't fit 100%. I find that you need one single part from China. You have to know a person that can haggle for you. Yeah, I found that in many cases, you know, if you're buying wholesale, typically you do it through Alibaba. They have connections to like just about every vendor you can think of, especially when it comes to phone parts. And what I'll typically do is if I'm looking at something there, you know, the catch being that there's a minimum order quantity. So they call it MOQ. So if you want to buy, you know, a charge port on Alibaba, they usually come in lots of 10, 100, you know, 50, something like that. But you can usually find the same item on AliExpress and buy one at a time. Obviously, it's, you know, you're still gonna have to pay. Oh, and here's another thing about it. Many times when you buy on AliExpress, the shipping will be free. So if they use the slow boat method, I like to call it, and it comes through China Post and not EMS, because let's see, EMS owns China Post or vice versa, one of the two. One of them will use DSL most of the time. DSL. Okay, one of them will use DHL most of the time. But if you use the standard slow boat method of China Post, there's typically no shipping fee. The only thing is it takes forever to get here. So when you see items that say, you know, will be 60 to 90 days for delivery, that's because they're taking advantage of this agreement that we have to encourage free trade that allows people to ship things from China to the US, and I mean all the way to your doorstep, and they don't have to pay any shipping fees, which is cool when it comes to, you know, finding onesie twosie items that you don't want to spend, you know, $35 to ship it over on DSL. But of course, then you have to wait a month or a month and a half to come over here. But I would say, Harvey, if you're finding things in China, there's typically a way to get them wholesale if you go through something like Alibaba. The only catch, of course, being that you will have to buy them in quantity. Now, what some enterprising people have done, of course, is to buy quantities of the more popular items and then sell them individually, 1, 2, 3 at a time, of course, on websites like eBay and so forth. And, you know, I should say with that, of course, the quality is going to be all over the place. So I think that if what you're saying is that you want to have someone in China to haggle with you, meaning over finding good price and good quality, I agree 100%. It's very difficult for us to know what we're getting from China until it gets here, and that's what sucks. And if you add into that equation the whole quality fade factor, where you buy something and you like it, and then you buy it again 2 months later and it's not the same item because someone decided that they can put in a cheaper integrated circuit onto the flex cable on their iPhone 6s screens, and you don't notice the difference until it's been out in the field for 6 months, and then Apple pushes an update and all of a sudden the touchscreen doesn't work. Yeah, that's, I think, exactly how we end up in situations like this. And how do you stop it? Yeah, having an advocate, or, you know, having a representative in China. Why hasn't someone started this as a business, you know, in China, where they go and inspect the quality of the item before it gets shipped, because we know we cannot rely on suppliers to do that all the time. Some are better than others. And when you find someone who supplies a good product consistently, obviously you form a permanent relationship with them and buy from them whenever you can. But, you know, even in that scenario, people come and go from these companies. So you might find someone who works at a particular place and it sounds great, and then they don't work there anymore. And whoever takes over for them has found another way to increase the bottom line, and we end up paying the price for that, which is really ironic because I actually got a couple drivers. This is funny. Let's see. I actually have one right here. Let me grab this real quick. I'll be like less than a minute. Okay, so I think I showed this in a preview either last week or the week before. I've been meaning to make a video on the channel. I will shortly. But I got this screwdriver from Baku. I'm sure you've heard of the name before. Let's see, where's the label? There it is. So this is a very popular name brand tool maker from China. And this particular driver comes with all of the bits that you need for iPhones right here in the cap. And that includes the tri-lobe. It includes the standoff driver for the logic board, the pentalobe, the Phillips, the 2.5 millimeter for the 6S, everything, like every single thing you need in a screwdriver right here, all at once for iPhones. Now I thought, hey, that's cool. You know, I need to get some of these. I need to get them on my website, start selling them. And ironically, I was contacted by another vendor in China selling tools, and they sent me their catalog. And what do you know? They've got the same screwdriver that I ordered from this company, from this manufacturer. They've got the same driver for a lower price, which didn't make sense to me. You know, I said, hey, if the manufacturer sells it for X amount of dollars and a distributor sells it for less, there's something I'm missing, right? So I went ahead and ordered half a dozen of them just to get a sample. And the interesting thing is they come in different colors, which is kind of cool. But as you can see by the package, not the same retail presentation, right? Definitely a different package here that we're looking at. But on top of that, when I got inside, it got even more interesting because I thought I grabbed the one that was already open. So I'll open another package. So when I got inside this thing, the first thing I noticed is no logo. Okay, so there's, oh, that's neat. Don't use a green screwdriver in front of a green screen. So, you know, I should sell this as a semi-transparent screwdriver, right? So if you take a look at this, oh, that's not going to work at all with my green screen. Why did I grab green? All right, give me one more second. All right, let's try this again and see if, yeah, purple shows up. Okay, so here's what I got. If you take a look at it, it looks very similar to the Baku model, but there's no branding. There's nothing written on the driver. We still have all the bits inside of the cap. They look similar, but it is not the same tool. You can feel the, I don't know how to explain it through a video, but you can feel that there's a difference in quality. When you extend this end here, it's actually stuck. This is supposed to be a telescopic bit that pulls out, but it definitely doesn't move smooth like the Baku one does. Obviously, it's a knockoff brand, but they've got it on their website where they sell these tools through and represent it as this same driver right here. So, I mean, obviously, this isn't news. There are a lot of counterfeits coming out of China, but it's very frustrating when you see things from a number of different suppliers. You order it thinking you're getting the same thing when in fact you're not. So it would be nice if there was just like a quality control expert that went out and inspected these shipments when they came from China, which, you know, most of what we do does. Yeah, a glass screwdriver. That looked cool, didn't it? I'm gonna have to do some photography stuff with that. That was kind of interesting. I find that if you need one single part from China, you have to know a person that can, oh, sorry, I just read the same comment that you made earlier. My bad. Yeah, the glass screwdriver, I thought that was kind of cool. Okay, so I think it is 9 minutes till. I have covered the majority of what I had planned for today. Let me double check. I want to make sure I'm not missing anything. Yeah, that was pretty much it. iOS 11, it looks cool. I am going to wait personally. I mean, everyone's different. I know there are a lot of people that like to be on the cutting edge. They can't wait to try out the new stuff. They, you know, use the beta version and everything else. But the phone that I have right now, the iPhone that I have is actually my main daily driver that I'm using still for the time being. So I don't want to experiment with that one just yet. I'll probably pull up side by side on another unit later on to test them out. And I think that is just about it. Let me just double check and see. Oh, I wanted to mention something else. I do have something cool coming in. As I was talking about, tool suppliers contacting me and asking me to demo stuff. I was seriously about to contact this company when they sent me this. Hopefully, let me make sure I have the right window open so I don't pull up the wrong thing. And yeah, I almost just pulled up the wrong window. Okay, so these guys contacted me and they are going to be sending me one of these. This is the Repair X magnetic sliding transparent something or other repair guide. I read some of the details and it looks really cool. It looks a lot like something that I had an idea for a concept that I wanted to do and I never followed through with. So I definitely cannot accuse them of stealing my idea, but they've taken a magnetic mat and templates that have pre-printed materials and put them together to sort of make phone repair disassembly easier. Now, I do make fun of people who use stuff like this just because, you know, it's really a great tool for techs that are learning new stuff. You know, getting that organization ingrained to where it becomes a reflex and you can concentrate on your repair while keeping your stuff organized. There's a bit of a learning curve when it comes to some people being able to do that. Beyond that, it's not something I would use on a phone that I take apart 3 or 4 times a day. However, if there is a particularly complex model that comes in, and you want to make sure that your part's going to the right place, it looks like it's going to be a really cool solution. Now, I have yet to test it. I haven't got it yet, but they said they'll be sending me one. I'll be checking that out and letting you know exactly what I think about that. And let's see. I will be doing, let me check the calendar real quick and make sure that I am correct. This is 2017. Actually, I should know if I look at the date. Today is the 25th, but I'm going to pull up the calendar so I don't make any obvious mistakes. Where are we? September 25th. So next Monday. All right, so next Monday will be the 2nd. I will definitely be here next Monday. I am not sure about the following Monday, and I meant to bring this up previously and haven't really decided exactly how I want to handle it, but 1 week a month I do training that goes from Monday through Thursday, and I feel that doing the live stream on Monday is probably better than Friday. I've done at least one on Friday, and it seemed like Monday just worked out to be a better day. But what that leaves me with is 1 week out of the month where I can't do the live stream because I'm doing training. So I'm considering whether or not I'll just move the training or maybe have 1 week where I do the live stream on Friday. I am always open to suggestions. Hi from Romania. How cool is it you can talk to people on the other side of the world? And every time I get critical about what my phone does, I have to keep reminding myself that I have a machine in my pocket that allows me to talk to anyone in the world. It has maps, just about every road map you could possibly want for anywhere on Earth, and that's just the beginning of what this thing can do. It's pretty amazing overall, and yet we complain. There was another surprise, supposedly, I wanted to say for iOS 11 that I might be leaving out, and if it comes to me, I'll come back to it. Give me half a second here while I check, because I usually have these open in the browser so I don't miss them. Oh yeah, this is kind of disgusting, but I'm reading, this is actually on telegraph.co.uk, so this is a UK website, and they're saying that people spend more time sitting on the toilet each week than exercising, which is not hard to believe because probably not as many people exercise as should. But here's the crazy thing. Well, they say that one of the biggest contributors to this problem is that people play with their phones while they're in the restroom. And I can't for the life, this has always been a mind boggler for me. Maybe this is just a stereotypical male logical way of thinking. But when I go into the restroom, I think the same way as I do when I go into a store. I'm on a mission to accomplish something. The sooner I get in and out, the better. Whether I'm getting in the shower, whether I'm shaving, washing my hands, whatever it is that I do in the bathroom, I want to get in and get out. And that's it. I don't want to spend any more time in there than necessary. I don't like hanging out in the bathroom. But which is why I can never get using your phone on the toilet. And that's only one of the reasons. I mean, the other one is obvious, and it explains why we end up with so many wet phones that have been in the toilet. But what possesses people to want to play with their phone in the bathroom? I figured you'd wrap up your business, come outside, and then play with the phone somewhere else. But to each his own, of course. So anyways, I will be doing training the second week of October, and that goes 4 days. It is in Antioch. And what is that exactly? Well, we do phone repair training where we take people who don't have a lot of experience as technicians and we get them hands-on training in a classroom. And I'm not here to plug that, but I've had a few people ask me on and off, and I just wanted to explain what that is that we did and why it's a good fit for some people, because there's some there's a lot of skepticism as to whether or not you should get any type of training for something like phone repair. And I would agree that if all you're going to do is switch out screens on iPhones, you probably don't need to go to a week-long or a 4-day-long course to learn how to do that. However, if you're going to start a business and you're going to be creating liabilities and you're going to be working on other things besides just iPhone 6 screens, then there's a lot more to learn, and what we like to do is give people the opportunity to get the hands-on experience with a variety of phones and tablets. So you don't have to go out and buy 12 or 20 different devices. Practice working on those so that you'll be prepared for when a customer comes into your store. So that's one of the main advantages to having the training. In addition to the fact that a lot of people will watch some very bad tutorials on YouTube, and I've seen the effects, and that is, I saw this on this website, it told me to do it this way, and they're doing it wrong, which is creating more liabilities for them and ultimately the potential to lose their customers' data, which, as we know, in this business is the most painful thing that can possibly happen. It can also identify a lot of bad habits that people develop on their own. And in rare cases, it can identify people who probably have no business working on phones, or at the very least will require a lot more practice before they start doing that. So we try to roll that all into 4 days in addition to the information they're going to need for promoting their business, setting it up, knowing how to stock their inventory, getting a hold of suppliers, understanding software and so forth, and just a little introduction to micro soldering. And it's a lot of information to pack into 4 days, but I can say, and I'm very proud to say this, I have helped a lot of people get started in this business after completing the training. So it's also a very self-satisfying thing for me to do, and to see the finished product when someone comes through the training and has the confidence and the experience and the information that they need to go out and be successful and avoid a lot of the pitfalls that people end up experiencing when they think that, oh, you just open your doors and start a business and everything is, going to go as planned, which is often not the case. All right, I see all the time people talking in their phone while using the public urinal. Yeah, wow. I don't even know what to say. That is so bizarre. While using the urinal, that takes some talent, I suppose. All right, so I'm going to leave this open. It is 2:59. I want to thank everyone who joined today. Feel free to put any questions that you might have in the chat box. I will leave this open for about the next 5 minutes or so because there's a lag. So if there's something that I need to respond to, I will absolutely do that. I'll let you know when I'm about to sign off. It's awesome that all of you guys showed up today, and gals, guys and gals. I shouldn't say that. Don't think I'm a sexist. I call everybody guys. It's just a thing. But if you have any comments, feel free to put them in there. I'll hang around here for the next few minutes, but I am going to change. Let's see. We're going to change to that. We're going to change to that. Oh, here's one more. I almost forgot. I had this on my list. I don't know if they fixed this on iOS 11, but I really hope they did. This is me taking a screenshot in my car, which is not a real wise thing to do, but I wanted to capture it. I actually pulled over to do it, if it makes you feel better. Unfortunately, I had to drive quite a ways to get there. So I'm using a navigation app in my phone when this pops up. And every time I sign in, it pops up again a couple days later, and I don't understand why I need to keep signing into iTunes. I'm signed in, leave me alone. How do I make it stop? If anyone has an answer to that, I would appreciate it. So if you haven't already seen this app, this is called Waze. It's a really helpful navigation app. Not only will it get you where you're going, show you where your turns are, it will tell you when there's traffic that you can avoid. It will let you report accidents. I mean, the functionality overall is huge. It's not perfect. Nothing is. It will occasionally have you go around in circles, but 99% of the time it will get you to your destination, and it will get you there with the, in the shortest amount of time possible. It will take into consideration things like traffic. So if other people are driving slow, it will add that into your estimated time of arrival and figure out how long it's going to take you to get to your destination. So I can't say enough good things about this app. I'm obviously not affiliated with them. I believe they're owned by Alphabet, which is basically the same company that owns Google. They bought out Waze a while back, blah, 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 integrated Google Maps into this. It is freaking awesome, and I don't get paid to say that. But here's the thing. When I open up my Waze, and if I have it in portrait mode like this in your car, and this thing pops up, this is what I'm seeing on my screen right before I hit an interchange that is very complicated, and I need to make sure that I'm taking the right exit. Why and how is it possible that this stupid iTunes prompt pops up in the middle of my app where I need that crucial information right then and there? And if you think about it, had someone sent me a text message and my little notification popped down from the top of the screen, I wouldn't have been able to see anything. But the fact of the matter is, I actually use this thing in landscape. Is it landscape? Yeah. I use this in the widescreen mode while I'm driving. So this is what popped up. The whole keyboard, this little alert, and I can't see where I'm going, and I can't figure out why this is happening. Like how, outside of logging in, which I do regularly, how do I just stay logged into iTunes? If anyone has the answer to that, I would love to hear it, because I got to tell you, this is one of the most frustrating things I've ever run into while I'm driving. And, I have other applications on my phone that as soon as you open them, everything else is blocked out. Like you might hear a notification, but nothing will pop up onto the screen. If we can't stop Apple from just continuing to ask you to keep logging into your iTunes all the time, at least it would be nice if some of these apps app developers could figure out a way to block out the iTunes prompt, because that is one of the most annoying things of all. And at least in one case, it caused me to miss my exit, which doesn't sound like a big deal, but if you're in the Bay Area and you're in traffic and you're on an interchange, that can slow your trip down by quite a bit. And obviously, when you're messing around trying to click cancel or whatever on your screen while you're driving, which remember, I'm the guy that doesn't like to touch my phone while I'm driving, it distracts me from paying attention to the road when I have to reach over to hit the cancel button on my phone so that I can see the map that I had pulled up in front of me. Okay, that was my moan and complain segment there. That's pretty much it for today. Again, I'll leave the chat open for the next few minutes. Thank you for joining me. If I don't hear any more today, I will see you next Monday again, 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Have a great week. Harvey, are you saying to disable notifications from Waze? Does that mean that from within the application it will disable outside notifications, or will that actually disable the notifications that Waze is sending to me? Because I thought that that's what that meant, and I'm probably completely wrong on that. Let's see. Okay, notification sounds. Badge icon, show on lock screen, alert style when locked. Okay, I will try that. I've currently got it set to allow all notifications. So maybe the options I have are show in notification center, sounds, badge, app icon, show on lock screen. So I'm not sure. I get the feeling that if I turn off these notifications, what I'm going to do is turn off the alerts that Waze sends me to tell me when to leave in order to get to my destination on time. But you could be completely right. And I will try turning off. I'll try experimenting with this. And if I can come up with the answer, I will definitely bring that up next week. Try it out. But yeah, this iTunes thing, which interestingly enough, the last few days it hasn't been going off, but it just continuously would pop up, log into iTunes, and whether I log in or not, it would come back. And let's see, show in notification center. I'll try turning these off one at a time. I'll try turning off the badge, app icon, show on lock screen. The only other thing I have are show in notification center. I don't think that this is going to accomplish what I'm hoping it will, but I will give it a try and let you know what happens. If I could turn off notifications from iTunes, that would be awesome. Where's that option? There's no iTunes option in here that I can see anyways. I'll see if I can figure it out though.